Hi there, my name's Ian Thackeray. I'm a philosophy teacher. I'm also the teacher in charge of psychology. I'm also a sixth form tutor now, philosophy, psychology, sixth form tutor. I think 95% of my time is given over to older boys rather than younger boys. I'm going to be talking about growth mindsets, which was the fourth topic on the list. Now, growth mindsets is a difficult topic to talk about because it's very circular in that you just end up going round and round in a big loop and you never actually come to the end of it. So I've just picked an arbitrary start point to go from, but it's also, out of all the things we've looked at tonight, it's the one that hasn't quite got all the research there yet. The research is very clear, it's pointing in a very specific direction, but the actual numbers, as in the 0.43s or the 0.5s or the 1.0s, they don't exist just yet, but we're fairly confident that they will exist in the not too distant future. So I started with this: education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. We speak to Mr. Gove, currently in charge of education. Education is the filling of a pail. We're going very much against kind of common trends here. The filling of the pail is the passing of exams. It's you have a bucket, you need to fill it as full as you can, and you take your full bucket into your exam, and that will hopefully get you through your exam. That is fairly useful to an extent, but there are some serious limitations that come with viewing education in that way, and so I'm just going to talk through a few of those things and hopefully about kind of lighting the fire. In terms of it not being enough, this quote here, sorry it's so long, but it's also available on your pack if you want to have a read through it later, is from Professor Tim Birkenhead. He wrote it for TES in February 2009. It's a little out of date, this quote, but it comes through consistently throughout kind of modern writing in the preparation of pupils for university education. He finds that the pupils that sit in front of him in university classrooms are not prepared. They are not equipped, they are not ready for university education. They have got some fantastic results. They go to some very highly recommended and highly competitive universities with a great set of results, but then they seem to grind to a halt. They don't seem to make the progress that their academic profile suggests. 3A stars at A-level strikes me as the kind of pupil that I'd like to work with. 3A stars at A-level doesn't guarantee me that I have the right kind of pupil that I'd like to work with. This is mainly to do with the mindsets. Mindsets are kind of a buzzword that's around at the moment. It's a very interesting topic. As I mentioned, it's developing. There are two mindsets. There is the fixed mindset. Now, a fixed mindset talks about talent as an innate ability. You're born able to do something. You're just good at stuff. It's easy. You're clever. You're good at spelling. You're good at maths. You're sporty. This is just something that probably through the genes of your family you've been passed. You've got lucky. You've got the right combination of genes, so you're good at stuff. Well, that means that they're going to spend their time demonstrating how they're good, just documenting basically their goodness, their ability, or their skills. They believe that talent alone creates success. They don't really have to try very hard because they're good at stuff. And then they find stuff that they're not very good at. They don't need to try at that because they're never going to be any good at that because they're just not very good at that. So they find the things that they've got some skills in, and then they kind of just narrow down their focus, narrow down their approaches. The growth mindset, however, appears to be a much more positive mindset to have. This is the mindset that hopefully we'll get those kind of control group analysis through shortly. And this is about abilities being developed, abilities being learnt, being nurtured, grown. So rather than thinking of being born with a sporting ability, you learn, you practice. Over time, and through a decent amount of failure, you get good at things. You find obstacles. You overcome those obstacles. It creates a love of learning. That's fantastic. The love of learning doesn't last the hour and 15 minutes I have someone in a classroom. A love of learning lasts a lifetime. If you think back to your teachers at school, probably the ones that you remember most were the ones that inspired you to go and learn for yourself. The ones that you were probably sat there, maybe misbehaving during their lessons, were the ones where potentially you were not being inspired in quite the same way. And a resilience. Resilience is very important. The real world is not a nice place to be unless you're resilient, unless you can overcome those obstacles that come your way. I've got Googled successful people. I went through them and I tried to work out, now I would love to say this in all confidence and say that all the people on here have growth mindsets. I'd say most of them have growth mindsets, and their growth mindset is potentially what has put them in the position that you see them. These are all successful people. I'm not sure what the Pepsi bottle is doing on the side of the picture, but the rest of it is relevant. I must have to clarify, obviously there's a little bit of luck involved in this. Richard Branson got a break basically by knowing someone who could help him out and give him a start, and so on and so forth. So there's other factors at work here. It's not just about a growth mindset, but that is one of the kind of major features. They can be summed up very simply in a checklist. You could probably go down this checklist and see if you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, and you could possibly see if your children have fixed mindsets or growth mindsets fairly quickly. A growth mindset is the kind of child that embraces challenges, they persist even though there are obstacles, they see effort as a path to mastery, they see the value of hard work. How often do we see that in the newspapers these days? Children don't value hard work. Well, if we can promote growth mindsets, maybe they would. They can learn from criticism. Some of our smartest pupils, some of our most talented pupils, learning from criticism is some of the hardest things that they have to do, and be inspired by others' successes. I'm not going to talk about the theory behind growth mindsets. If anyone is interested, I do have an email address, and I have a huge amount of research on this that I'll quite happily email out to you. But I'm going to focus a little bit on what we do as a school, and then specifically on what I do as a psychology teacher with my A-level groups in order to try and promote and push these growth mindsets. It does begin in year 7. We've started a program this year, which we're going to hopefully roll out to subsequent years as things are tried and tested and updated, about growth mindsets. We're going to look at some difficult, interesting, hopefully, topics. These are two people. These two people are so smart, you can't actually accurately measure their IQ, because there's no one smarter than them who can come up with a test hard enough that they will fail it. They are somewhere between 195 and 210 in terms of IQ points. The boys at this school should be somewhere around 120 is an average mark, so they are significantly higher. These two people have exactly the same IQ. They have phenomenally different lives. This here is a man called Robert Oppenheimer. Robert Oppenheimer, I think his first name's Robert, was the lead scientist on the Manhattan Project. He developed and controlled the development of the atomic bomb. At university, he didn't really get on with one of his professors at Oxford University, and he tried to poison him. In those days, these things weren't sorted out by the police because it was Oxford University. They handled things themselves. So he's brought in front of a tribunal, and he managed to convince the tribunal that he was perfectly justified in trying to poison his professor, and they didn't mention it again. The other man is called, Chris Langham. I have difficulty remembering his name because it has no significant story to tell, really. His story is one not of success and of greatness, but one of just kind of average. He's won some money on some game shows. He uses his IQ to pass game show tests and win some money in America on things like Jeopardy. He lives in a trailer park with his mum. And we look at things because a lot of boys come to the school and they think, I'm clever, I'm smart, I've passed an exam. It's not just about being clever or smart or passing an exam, it's about learning the skills to do something with it, something that separates these two. We do that we're going to do that every couple of weeks, an informal kind of year 7, everyone's invited, come on in, we'll look at something like this and basically see what they find interesting, see what works, and anything that is interesting like this, then obviously we will roll out to other years as well. I've no idea what the sensor is, I'm just clicking the button. The main point at which mindsets kick in is the jump from GCSE to A-level. This is obviously where I come into my own, because this is usually, for most of the kids that I teach, the first time that I actually see these boys is the first day of year 12 when they walk into my classroom. I've seen them around, I've maybe covered a lesson with them, but I don't really have much contact. A fixed mindset can probably get you through your GCSEs. A bit of hard work and a fixed mindset, a decent amount of revision, and you're fine. Your A-levels, it's going to start to hit you. You're going to start to struggle. If you're not equipped with the struggle, the jump from GCSE to A-level can be very difficult. It can be very daunting. It can be very stressful. And as such, this is the time at which, again, I bring up and bring in the growth mindset, and we try to teach and promote the growth mindset. Some of my sixth formers are just going to join in just a minute from now and talk you through some of the things that we do. But the first thing that I do is pretty much what we're doing here in terms of A-level psychology. I tell them these things. I tell them about peer marking. I tell them about assessment for learning. I tell them about the value of writing their own questions. I show them practice, how to work less and gain more. Everyone comes to their exams 3 days before their exams, has a massive panic and tries to cram for 16 hours. The diligent child who spent 30 minutes a day for the past however many weeks outperforms them every single time. It's hard to revise a month or two before your exams. A little and often helps do it. So I go through these things and I teach them, and I try and point out to them the value of what we're doing. It's a very open forum in terms of teaching and learning in the sixth form. They know what we're doing, they know why we're doing things, and hopefully in the same way that we're trying to get your information, your input, and get your feedback on these things, we get theirs as well. Things they like, things they value, so on and so forth. Boys, want to stand up? Fred, James and Junto are just going to run through a brief bit of what we do in terms of psychology.
Okay, I'm Fred Harmon. I'm in year 12 at this school and I study psychology. Yeah. At the start of the year, we were taught the very basics about psychology. We were taught about how to conduct simple experiments, observations, self-reports, which is things like questionnaires and interviews and things, and correlational studies. One correlational study I'm sure you're all familiar with is the myth that the MMR jab causes autism. Now, it's okay to say that the MMR jab causes autism, however, it is equally okay to say that autism causes the MMR jab. That, of course, it's impossible. So, therefore, the myth that the MMR jab causes autism isn't true. So what I've just done there is the skills that we've learned in the classroom, I've applied it to a real-life situation. So those skills don't have to be used in the classroom. It can be used in, real life in cases such as that. Once we had a grasp of the basics, we were taught the different psychological approaches. We've got social, cognitive, developmental, physiological, and individual differences. The social approach looks at how our environment affects our behaviour. So, for example, if you go into a library, you're going to be a lot quieter and won't be talking as loud, which isn't something you'd usually do. The physiological aspect looks at the shapes of our brain and sees how that affects the way we act in different situations. Another thing we made to do at the start of the year was to find a case that we had an interest in. A case that was totally irrelevant to any of the case studies on the syllabus. This could be anything from the Central Park jogger case to a goldfish swimming in alcohol. We chose these cases because we found them interesting and enjoyable. If we have an interest in something, then we'd be more willing to learn more about it if we found it interesting, we'd be more willing to learn about it than if we found it dull. Studying things of interest helps us to understand the basics of psychology. These skills could then be applied to the studies that are found in the syllabus. Studying these unrelated cases helped me to develop a greater understanding of psychology, and it helped me a lot for my exams.
Hi, I'm Junta Prashant. I'm a psychology student and I've just started sixth form. As you can probably tell, I'm a little bit nervous, so bear with me if I make any mistakes. A friend mentioned the skills he learned that made him good at psychology helped me with my other subjects, such as biology, making it easier for me to learn, concentrating on a specific topic and expanding my knowledge on it. As well as that, Mr. Thakra taught us how to speed, which is an ability to read a lot faster and go through information quickly whilst retaining an understanding of the material. As Fred said earlier, he didn't appreciate how useful the skills were till revision for exams. There are many different types of sources, such as the traditional sources, like textbooks and revision guides. However, these sources are good, but how they're limited, as you can read it but not necessarily understand it. Mr. Thacker encourages us to do more autonomous learning.
Okay, and that's where I come in. Hi, I'm James Vardy. I, like Pinto, had joined at sixth form, and I'm a psychology student also. Well, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I'm going to talk about the additional sources and just talk about what we do away from, the normal sources through Mr. Thacker and through books in class. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is websites. Now, Mr. Thacker actually has his own website that he developed, and that covers all areas of the syllabus. So if I have a specific weakness in a particular study, I can refer to that website and I can see what I'm doing wrong, which brings me on to my next point. We're now using Twitter, which is absolutely brilliant. It's very interactive, and as you know, if you know anything about Twitter, it continually releases like streams of information. This means that we can keep interactivity with me and Mr. Thacker, and we can do it in real time too. So if I ask Mr. Thacker a question, he can respond in the next few minutes, and that keeps the kind of real time feel outside of the classroom. Okay, and the last one is, to me, the most important one. Now, originally when Mr. Thacker told us that we had to do peer learning, we all collectively groaned. We didn't see the value in learning off a fellow pupil, as we thought we were in the same boat. Mr. Thacker was the one with the qualification at the end of the day. We thought we just had to learn off him, read the textbooks that he provided, but no. And at first, yeah, we grudgingly kind of went for it, but we got into it, and I kind of actually realised the value of peer learning when revising for my summer exam this year. And I've got to say that the act of teaching enabled me to gain a greater understanding, and of course the act of learning from a fellow pupil enabled me to pick up on something that Mr. Thacker may have not talked about, so a particular area of study that I didn't really understand, but it was only because the information was missing, and I gained that from talking to a fellow pupil. So how did we do this? Well, we got post-it notes and wrote what our main strengths and our main weaknesses were for particular areas of psychology. We then cross-referenced with all the other pupils and saw what their strengths and what their weaknesses was, and we got matched up, so my strength would be another's weakness. And I saw progress pretty much straight away as an individual, as well as seeing the group collectively and seeing how that progressed. And we only did that for something about 4 weeks. And there's one last point I'd like to make. Junto talked about how the transferable skills from psychology helped in his other A-levels. He used the example of biology. Well, I'd like to talk about how that could help us with our university degree and further into employment afterwards. So personally, I want to go into law, hopefully. So the transferable skills that I gained from psychology are absolutely brilliant. So speed reading is a key one. I can read through a piece of legislation or a case in terms of psychology, and I can pick out all of the keywords the same as anyone else, and yet I can do it in half the time. This puts me above competition, and as you know, law is a very competitive subject. And also, I'll be reading cases just as you would do in law, so it was absolutely perfect for me. So what I'm trying to say here is that the transferable skills that you get from psychology don't just stop at full-time education, they carry on with you through university and eventually, hopefully, through to employment. And that's something that this autonomous revision really encourages. Thank you.
I have to say, their willingness to get involved, they're possibly the most enthusiastic group I've ever had try this. The resistance to this is always phenomenal, because yes, people do believe that, well, I know more than them, and therefore I should be telling them what they need to know. And that is very much the fixed mindset. I have the talent, I have the ability, so I should be telling them. But unfortunately, that's not always the way it's going to work, and in fact, the idea of them managing their own learning, taking over control and responsibility, allows them to individually plan what they need to do, and that's the kind of development of the growth mindset. You'll notice that there are 5 things on the board. One of them is course content. That means we do 4 things that are nothing to do with the course content. Obviously, revision is part of the course content. And we spend a significant amount of time not actually covering the course material. This seems, again, rather counterintuitive. Sports psychology, a very simple example. It's not really about who gets the quickest first 3 strides. It's not the person to hit the 10-metre mark first. It's not the person who gets the 20-metre mark first. It's the person who's got the highest top speed. When that top speed is reached, we'll find them, no matter how far behind they are, gaining and overtaking. And if they cross the line first, the fact that they were last out of the blocks doesn't really matter. So we spend a significant amount of time focusing on skills, getting out of the blocks slowly, rolling through some ideas, learning some skills. And the course content, when we hit it, when we get to it, just flies by. It's much easier to understand, they're far more efficient in their learning, and as such, hopefully when the results come through in August, I'll be able to say without a shadow of doubt this definitely works, obviously. I'm going to put a little caveat on that just in case it all goes horribly wrong. The final thing that I want to talk about just very quickly is this picture here. I really tried hard to find a picture in which the arrows pointed the same way. I must have looked through 1,000 images on Google, seriously, it was 1,000 images on Google, trying to find success and failure pointing in the same way. Some people kind of traditionally view success and failure. You either walk the path towards success over here, or you walk the path towards failure over here. They're actually both in the same direction. Just success is slightly further along the path. So you've got to obviously walk towards failure, you've got to walk past failure and through failure in order to get to success on the other side. And that's something that we're really trying to encourage. Too many. This is something, failures are still virtually inevitable. Deliberate practice, concentration, we all know that's how it works. A small child doesn't stand up and walk. It stands up and falls over. Very funny sometimes, but eventually learns to walk. It's all about the failure along the way to success. So it's about designing things that they can't do, pushing them beyond. And again, the case study that we saw earlier shows the importance of challenge and pushing people beyond their comfort, and growth mindsets works in this way as well. Real world impact of this is very simple. First of all, if you look around the workplace, you will find the people that are most valuable to you, and the people who seem to do best are those that tick the list on the growth mindset. You probably won't go to someone with a fixed mindset for help. You will go to someone with a growth mindset for help. You find the problems that you face in the real world are better solved using a growth mindset. We've recently had a lot of information come out of the Oxbridge universities, that's Oxford and Cambridge. They get a lot of highly qualified candidates, 3 A stars across the board, exemplary, top of their class, never failed, phenomenal academic record. They put them in a situation where they are designed to fail, and they see how they cope with that failure. And those that cope well with failure get offers. Those who don't cope well in a system where they are pushed and forced to fail, they're the ones that come away from that interview without an offer. It's not just the academic results that you get, it's the skills that you carry with you. Oxford University released a piece of information, I haven't remembered this one, about the things that they were looking for. They were looking for pupils who had a resilience to challenge. That's on there. They were looking for children who had the ability to work out problems. That's on there. And be comfortable with a task they know or feel they are not going to complete. Effort as a path, learn from criticism, and persist despite obstacles. That's what the top universities look for in their candidates. If we can develop that now, then when they hit university, they are going to fly through their course. Finally, what can parents do? What can you do? We try to get these things in, but any help promoting a growth mindset is always encouraged. Be interested, yes, in what they can do. I'm not saying you should go home, you're a very skilled musician, you should now just ignore anything that they can do well, okay? Obviously, keep praising them for the things they do well, but take an interest in those things that they can't. The things that they struggle with, they'll learn more from what they struggle with than from what they find easy. Doing something you can already do just demonstrates you can already do it. Doing something you can't do and eventually getting it right teaches you something new. Praise efforts, even if it results in failure. It's just obvious, really. I think that one. It will ultimately result in success. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not during their life at Ermestead, maybe not during their life at university, but at some point it will yield the results. And the final thing is good helping questions. I get a lot of children coming to see me because I do set challenging tasks that they definitely will never be able to complete. And some of the sixth formers will quite happily tell you how awkward I can be. And they go, I don't get it. Okay, what don't you get? I just don't get it. It's not really any use to me as a teacher. It's not really any use to you as a parent, that response. I don't get it. Well, there are more useful questions that could be asked. So, why don't you understand it? Which specific bit don't you understand it? Could you work out the solution in a different way? Have you persisted at it long enough? Have you given it enough time? And when a boy comes to me and says, I've got to here, and this bit between stage 4 and stage 5, I'm really struggling with, that I can help with. Very clearly, very quickly, I can help them through that. And that allows both them to make progress while they're at home, so kind of pushing them on with their homework, pushing them on with their revision, but it also helps me when they come in because I've actually got a job that I can fix, rather than having to just go through everything I've ever taught them again. And the final one is encourage them to bring their own questions and solutions to problems. Teachers here, I know I am a teacher, so I speak very highly of the teachers here. We are fantastic. We give up a lot of our free time. Any boy who is interested in a subject, who goes to a teacher who is also interested in that subject and asks a question, will have their question answered. If they bring in a question that they don't understand, we're more than happy to help. So please just keep encouraging them, not just to sit and suffer in silence, but to kind of stand up and get involved. Thank you very much. I'll pass back to Mr. King.